Hey gang, Mark Sweeney here from Austin Dental Spa in beautiful and cold Austin, Texas. It's supposed to get down to freezing tonight. Why the heck am I starting out the new year with these? Because, as you know, if you've tuned in before, we have a different theme every month, and this is the first Wisdom Wednesday, not only of January, but of 2025. And we decided the theme's going to be Jumpstart January. So had to have the jumper cables to drive my point home. So thanks for joining us. I hope you had a great holiday season. Christmas, Hanukkah, and New Year's all have happened since our last Wisdom Wednesday. And we closed out 2024 on a good note. I hope you did as well. And now we're into 2025, a whole new year. No presidential election this year, so maybe it'll be safe to turn your TV back on. Anyway, we're going to have a great year this year. We're also going to have a great time today. As you know, from tuning into previous Wisdom Wednesdays, we usually do a little scientific talk on a recent paper that's come out, not always just about dentistry. Sometimes it's about health in general. Today is going to be no difference from that subject. I've got a very interesting topic to bring up. If you're tuning in for the first time, that's sort of the backbones of what we do, is go over recent scientific research, and then we end with a health tip. And I've got a good health tip that's going to be really good for us Texans experiencing some freezing weather the next couple of days or nights. So let's get right into it. The British Journal of Sports Medicine, we try to find US-centric scientific reports, but it's a big world out there. We get a lot from Japan. We even had a couple from Switzerland and Sweden last year. The UK is very, very active, their medical society, because they've been around a lot longer than America has. So this was very, very interesting, though, for all you people who are couch potatoes, who don't really like exercising and feel like the rest of the world that does exercise on a regular basis kind of body shames you or athletic shames you. You're going to love this today, because this journal, the British Journal of Sports Medicine, did a study recently on people that self-classified themselves as non-active, non-athlete, non-workout types. They were couch potatoes, as we call them here in America. And they found these people. I'll get to the specifics in a second. But the significance for us in America is the Center for Disease Control states that, if you can believe anything that they say after the last 4 years, 1/4 of Americans, which I believe this is probably a pretty accurate number, 25%, 1 in 4 Americans do not exercise. I mean, I'm not saying not regularly like the first week of January. They never exercise. They're couch potatoes. So that makes this study even more interesting, because this study in the UK had 22,000 participants. So that makes a fairly significant study. One of the studies I quoted last year in early December had one participant in the study, which kind of casts some light on, well, can you extrapolate into the rest of the population? But 22,000 people between the ages of 40 and 69, men and women. But the interesting thing was the participants wore an activity bracelet, an activity tracker for 1 week each year from 2013 to 2015. So for 2 years, they wore an activity monitor. And on average, men, they were measuring for these non-athletic people who self-admittedly never worked out, but they had brief bursts of activity, like carrying the groceries in from the car, or walking up a flight of stairs because the elevator was broken, or, carrying luggage to the airport counter, something like that, that was brief but high intensity. And men, on average, out of these 22,000 people, men had 11 short bursts of activity on a typical day. Women, where was it in here? Women had under 3.5 vigorous activities per day. Now, again, this is Britain, so don't know how that extrapolates to the United States, but this is less than 10-year-old research. Then they looked at the instances over that 2-year period of heart attacks, heart failure, or strokes through November of 2022. Now, the participants worked, they studied them from 2013 to 2015, but then they followed them for 10 years after that until 2022, so for 8 years. And they found that only 800 participants had some major vascular event, like a heart attack, a stroke, or any kind of heart-related stuff, hypertension, whatever. Only 800. But out of 22,000 people, that actually is a fairly low number out of that many people, under 10%. So the women, and so the men, they just kind of ruled that out. And we'll get back to the men in a few minutes, but the study pointed out some interesting things that the researchers did not expect. Again, women only typically had 3.5 minutes of vigorous movement through the day, but they were found the people who did have 3 to 5 minutes of vigorous activity, only 3 to 5 minutes, and it's something as simple as walking up a flight of stairs, they had a 45% lower risk of heart problems. So they weren't in that 800 people who did have heart problems. They had a reduction of 45%, almost 50% in heart incidences over the next 10 years. So they were nearly 50% less likely to have a heart attack just from 3 minutes a day of some kind of vigorous activity, which I guess could include washing dishes, or I don't know about cooking, but you know, you can use your imagination, 3 to 5 minutes of vigorous activity. Men saw a smaller benefit. Even though they had more vigorous activity per day, they said the typical man did about 5.5 minutes of vigorous movement for the day, and it only reduced their potential risk of heart events by 16%. So less than half of what the women experience. So what they took away from this, and what I concluded from this, is physical activity doesn't always have to involve dedicated exercise like going to the gym or walking around the block. It doesn't have to be something intentional. It has to be something like carrying your groceries inside. So don't feel bad if the rest of the time you sit around, especially women in the ages 40 to 69, because that actually is beneficial to just enjoy those moments where you're having to carry a suitcase up a flight of stairs, because that 3 minutes of activity is reducing your chance of a heart attack by 45%. And the other takeaway I had is that the benefits of these small bursts of activities has a bigger effect than anybody ever knew. So the researchers were quite surprised by this. And I hope that's been helpful information for you, so you don't, kick yourself for not going to the gym for the first week of the year. Now, we're on to our health tip for the week. Freezing temperatures expected tonight, tomorrow night, and maybe into the next night. It's supposed to warm up into the high 40s during the days, but we're also getting some rain tomorrow too. And of course, that brings out all the ice paranoia that, we're not going to be able to get to work tomorrow. But if it stays above freezing, it may rain, but it isn't going to ice over. Maybe out in the rural areas. The worst thing I can imagine is being stuck in a car. You see those news videos from up north when an ice storm blows through and people are lined up on an interstate highway for miles and miles and miles, running their engines until they run out of gas, or if you're in an electric car, then you're really screwed because it just stops working and you got no heat. in the car, and you can't even turn the car on if you've run out of gas or electricity. So make sure your car is in good working condition. If you're worried about the ice or small potential for snow tomorrow, go gas your car up now while it's still above freezing, and make sure that these are things that the experts suggested that you should make sure that your battery's charged, that your tires are good, they've got the right amount of air, your windshield wiper blades are fresh, and that you have a tank full of gas. They also claim that here's things you need: jumper cables in case you do run out of electricity, flashlight, a blanket, a first aid kit, a strong rope or chain so that you can get towed if the person offering to tow you doesn't have one of those. You want to have one yourself. A fully charged cell phone and or a phone charger, and water and snacks. All those things might be lifesavers, especially if you live up in the icy areas like in North Texas, where the football game is in Dallas, Hook 'em Horns, Friday night, and it's supposed to be freezing temperatures up there, and they regularly get ice on the roads up in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So, main point, be safe out there in the new year and prepare for the worst case scenario. I hope that's been helpful information today. Thanks for listening, and I will see you next week for version number 2 of Wisdom Wednesday 2025.